Tonight on Nova Legends podcast, I have my panel of esteemed soccer coaches. We're going to talk about the upcoming season, 2024 season, and all the things that come into putting together a team. With me today, I got Lewis coach John Millward. His Lewis team got to the state final last year, I believe, lost on penalties. Thanks for seeing you again. Sorry to remind you about that, Coach, but good to see you again. I got Coach Dan Drickey of Hayfield. Coach Drickey's team won the Occoquan region last year. Had a great team, fun to watch. I believe Coach lost in penalties as well in the state semifinals. But it's great to see you. Thanks for doing this. I got Coach Jimmy Carrasquillo, who from Washington and Liberty. Coach Jimmy, my own son played against Coach Jimmy quite a few times. Coach Jimmy's quite a competitor. And Washington Liberty is always going to be tough, and I'm sure he's getting ready for another great season. And of course, the star of the show, Coach Bo Amato. We finally got enough money together to pay his parents' fee. Coach Bo, but Coach Bo did join us. He's coach of Langley. Coach out of nowhere last year qualified for the state, and always puts together a great team, lots of fun. And hey, Coach Drickey, I want to make sure I said your team's Hayfield. I want to make sure I get my credit there. But Coach Bo's from Langley. So guys, thanks for joining me again. Good to see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. So look, guys. First thing I thought we'd talk about. We were kind of talking about this offline. Is the tryout process. And I know it could be very stressful for coaches, but obviously for kids, for some of these kids, it's do or die. Let's talk about it. Does the trial process work? Do you get enough time to really evaluate the kids? Are you just trying to check enough boxes so that you did your job and you kind of have a sense of who's going to make the team? Because you don't really have a lot of time to really evaluate the kids. Does the trial process work? And let's just talk about your process and whether or not you're excited about it coming up this week. Who wants to go first?
We'll let the star of the show go first.
Yeah. Okay.
Jimmy.
Coach Bell, why don't you get us started?
Me? Oh, yeah, I think it works. I mean, I don't know why it doesn't. I mean, the reality is we have 4 or 5 days to take a look at some players, and obviously I know a few of the boys that are returning. So those that were terrific last year, they kind of get a little bit of a pass, but if they show up at 400 pounds, it could be a problem. But the reality is, I've had many kids in McLean or wherever player on a lesser team make my roster in my high school versus they played on a lesser team in a club. So I sometimes get questions as to why did this player on a lower team in this club make it versus this player on a ECNL team? Why did this kid? And I said, well, I don't have their resume when they show up. All I can do is see the player that plays in front of me and the player that listens and tries to play football versus not. I mean, I remember going to tryouts myself. I didn't enjoy it, but that's the reality of sports. And we have about 6 to 8 eyes looking at all the players. The coaches are talking, and after a few days, you sort of make your decisions. And the reality is, look, if I was any good at coaching, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be coaching at some pro club in Europe or South America. So let's put this in perspective. I mean, you can ask these gentlemen what they get paid. They lose money after all their driving to and from practice. So, I think everybody does the best they can. And life isn't fair. And I think, the beauty of sports, which I think Fairfax County and all the other counties in Virginia forget, is athletics can teach young boys and young girls that life isn't fair, and you've got to find a way, and I think sports does that, and I think people forget that sports provide that to children, which I think is a really important, useful thing that we need for life.
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in here? I know Coach Drickey, I know you're probably getting tons of emails from kids wanting to try out after your very successful season last year.
We are. I actually spent the last half hour before joining you answering emails to kind of echo what we were talking about earlier. The frustrating part is the last minute or the emails from parents rather than the prospective student athletes. It is what it is. It's tight space. It's a tight window. But I would echo Bo's sentiments. At this point, I don't care who you play for during the year. I want somebody that's going to show up after school and play. I want somebody that when they pull that jersey on, have a sense of pride and a sense of wanting to accomplish something, and move on from there. I've sent really good soccer players home because they didn't have the right attitude that we were looking for. And I'm not at a school where we can really afford to do that competitively. But we will always conduct business that way, because if they don't want to be there, then it's only going to pull everybody else down.
Yeah. Coach John, Coach Jimmy, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I'll echo what Dan's saying. It's frustrating with regards to the last minute guys. I mean, they give us the opportunity to have these green days and having interest meetings and all that stuff, and all you can do is preach about the mandatory requirements going in, and you're still getting guys on Saturday and Sunday that are, shoot, I still got to get my physical into the athletic trainer before training on Monday, and it's like, yeah, you do. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around that. But you can only be black and white and fair across that board. All the information's been shared. We found, again, taking with regards to the interest in folks showing up to Green Days has really been helpful, with regards to kind of, again, seeing the folks that are interested, seeing the folks that are dedicating their time out of season to show up and, try to intermingle with the squad. When you're returning a bunch of players, or you got a lot of prospective JV kids that are coming back and, attempting to make the varsity roster, it really makes a competitive setting, which is great. But, similar to everybody else, right? I mean, we're going to have, again, 130 kids coming out, and, you got an hour and a half, 2 hours with these guys, and we're making cuts after, first cuts after 3 days of tryouts. And, that nobody enjoys doing that process. But just like Bo was saying, we've all tried out for teams. We've all played in our respective high schools. I was a guy as a freshman that got cut from Woodson, right? They went on to win a state championship, but I have that perspective of what it's like to be cut, and then what you do with that as motivation, right? To carry you through and play collegiately and whatnot. So, that's kind of the message that we give to these boys, whether they make the team or not, we reference and try to let them know where their deficiencies were, why they didn't make it, but also where they can go, what clubs are available for them in order to improve, to set them up for success the following tryout year.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Coach Jimmy, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I think, obviously, this panel of coaches has been around a while, and we've seen the ebb and flow of kind of what high school soccer has become. But I think, you get a lot of kids that come out, and you get, some people like, oh my gosh, you get like 100 and some odd kids. Yeah, I mean, but, realistically, I'm sure everybody else would agree, you prefer quality over quantity. Because that just means I have to tell, 30 freshmen that they can't play, JV soccer, and I prefer to have 15 quality freshmen and tell 5 of them or 10 of them that they could make a team, you know what I mean? So I think it does. And we do the same thing, kind of everybody else, like, it's our way. We've been doing things the same way for a while. And, if you don't fit the profile for what we want to do, then yeah, maybe playing at WNL is not the best thing for you. So, we have expectations just like everybody else. Now I see more and more teams having success from our area, going through regional tournaments and state tournaments and stuff like that. So I think now the expectation for a lot of programs is like, if you're not winning your conference, or if you're not winning the region, and moving on to the state tournament, then, it wasn't a good season, and whereas before, you had 2 or 3 teams that was it, and everybody else was happy if they were, 500 or more. But now with so many talented kids just all across the area, and so many of them do play club ball year round, then obviously that's just going to trickle down. And now you're getting more kids that are playing at a high level, then that gives you an opportunity to kind of look at those kids and, pick the best ones that you think would fit kind of your program. But it is, we don't look at where a kid plays or where he's come from. I work in the building at WNL, and so sometimes when we have certain meetings or this or that, people sometimes know who I am, and so a parent will come up, oh yeah, my son plays, Arlington White. that's great. I mean, that's what do you want me to do with that information? That your son plays for Arlington White. That's fantastic. Now he's going to have to compete against a junior or senior that plays for Arlington ECNL, or plays for Alexandria MLS Next. Like that's who's going to have to compete with. So I hate to tell you, I don't know what to tell you, and with that information, like that's great. We'll see where he fits in. And I think they come in with, sometimes these things where you're supposed to be impressed, and I'm like, yeah, that half our squad, plays travel, or more than half our squad plays travel. So I think it does become sometimes difficult. I think everybody here says the same thing. Like, you have to, or at least most, I think, would assume that make cuts after the 3 days. Is that enough? We don't know. You know what I mean? What we've done is split it up. So we have the underclassmen, 9th and 10th graders at 1 hour, and then we bring in juniors and seniors. If the younger kids do really well within those 9th and 10th graders, then we might bring them back to work out with the juniors and seniors. And if they do really well, then that's obviously a kid that can play at that level. And then we kind of take a look at that. But it is, I mean, would it be easier? I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but, everybody plays on our turf. So you only have normally during the week. Now, tomorrow we have 2 hours. But, the Tuesday through Thursday, I think we'll have an hour and a half. What am I going to do with the 135 kids for an hour and a half? I mean, like that's not enough time, so it's 45 minutes one group, 45 minutes another group. They're playing, so, we do the best we can. I think, you use your resources, and as Bo said, you do get guys that are coming back the following year. So you have a good idea of, what guys you can kind of maybe count on, and then just looking to fill those spots of kids that graduated.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Coach. How much time do you guys spend recruiting in the building? Coach Bo and I have talked about this a lot over the years. Like, you have a lot of kids. Every school has got kids who play high level soccer, but they've been told that high school soccer is kickball. They've been told many things, and they're not going to try out for the team. I know I was talking to Keith Leonard, his son Matthew Leonard was a star player from Marshall last year, and he's got a little brother, Derek Leonard, that's playing at Marshall, and they have 2 kids that are playing for Bethesda, their top team, and Derek's been trying to talk those kids into coming out for the team because Marshall has several good players, but they need a couple more to put them over the top. Do you guys spend time recruiting kids in your own building to come out for high school? Like, hey, and I know Coach Millward, we've talked about this before in the past. With Lewis, you got kids in different clubs in that Springfield area. They might not know about high school soccer or whether it's worth it or not. So anyway, how much time do you guys spend recruiting your own kids?
I'll start. We'll go backwards. I don't recruit any kids, to be honest with you. If a kid wants to play for the school, they'll come out. They'll find you. They'll do whatever they have to do. I've never actively gone to a kid and say, "Hey, you should come out for the soccer team." Never. In the 25 years I've been at WNL now, I've never done that. Not Lucas Mendez, not Michael Nunez, none of those guys. Mm-hmm. Like if they wanted to play for the school, they know where to find me. They know where to come. They know what to do. And to me, that's the biggest testament because, it's one of those, they want to be a part of it. And if they want to be a part of it, then there's no need to go recruit somebody. You know what I mean? There's no, I'm not trying to sell them on trying to play for the team. If they see the value in it, if they really do want to do something and be a part of that, then, they will find a way to, get that physical in, or they will find a way to, get interest to be a part of that, so, and it's not that I think or try to be arrogant where I'm too proud to find a kid or anything like that. But no, I think that once you start doing that, or at least on my end, once I start doing that, and then a kid will say, "Oh yeah, well, Coach Jimmy, he came to my class and he talked to me about trying out." You know what I mean? And then it gets to another kid and he's like, "Well, he didn't tell me to come out." There's little things like that. So it's just, to me, that's just not, kind of how I want to go about things. It's always, the kids that really want to be a part of it. And even sometimes emails, like you guys were saying earlier, I have one or 2 emails, thankfully not too many, but 1 or 2 where, kid is hurt. I mean, he's talking about, well, I don't know whether to try out because I'm coming off of an injury. What are your perspectives? It's up to you. I'm not going to tell you whether to come out or not. You know what I mean? Because I have to evaluate you. If you're there to be evaluated, great. If you're not, you're not. If you're injured and we see, hey, this kid is playing injured, but he's still pretty good, then that gives us a gauge of kind of like, okay, well, if he's pretty good at this level, then if he recovers, or then he may be able to compete a bit more. But yeah, I've never actively recruited any kids. I try to get some kids that are on the border of was it like Langley area? I try to get them to come over to Arlington. They never move. Their houses aren't big enough in Arlington for those kids.
No, I can give you other reasons, but that's okay.
Yeah.
No,
Anyone else want to jump in here?
yeah,
about
I'll
recruiting?
jump in since we'll go reverse order. I couldn't, Jimmy, that's well said. I couldn't really say anything different because it's 100% true, right? I mean, culture is built from within. If you're not going to desire to be part of the culture, why do we need to like handhold you to it? You know, the thing that's interesting though is players and positive culture recruits itself. And you know, people want to be a part of that. And so that's been the real kind of neatest thing. As a guy that's not in the building on a day-to-day basis, you know, it nothing warms the heart more than somebody, you know, reaching out and saying, hey, I saw what you guys have been doing, you know, I want to be a part of that. You know, not the other way around. So that's kind of from my perspective.
Yeah. Coach Jimmy or Coach Bo? Coach Dan, Coach Bo, want to jump in here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the building and I feel like all I do in the hallways is talk soccer. And then the season rolls around and tryouts are over and people are like, oh, did so-and-so show up? I heard they're really good. And I'm like, no. And they, well, why didn't you go get them? If they want to be there, they'll be there, just like everybody said. I'm happy to continue having those conversations with those kids because if that's their passion, great. Let's talk about it. Let's keep you in the building. Let's do something. But I don't feel like me begging someone to show up is going to end well for many of the reasons that the guys have already said. But if they want to be there, they'll be there. And every couple of years, May rolls around and a kid will show up that we knew about and they'll be like, hey, is it too late for me to jump on? And we're good. You know what I mean? These kids have run through snow. They've run through goodness knows what, and we're good. You know, you can come out next year, but this year we're good. We're going to ride with what we've got. And we've always been that way. And as I said, I'll have the conversations in the building, but it's never going to be, you should really come out and try out, or please, please, please come try out. Cause then I'm done. Like at that point, I have no credibility with that kid. I have no kind of authority over him because they just look at it as another coach trying to recruit him. And I think some of that stems from club because any parent that's willing to stroke a check is going to find a club team for their child, whether they're club level player or not. And I don't want that in the teams that I'm coaching at the high school level.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Coach Bo, I know you'll have a lot to say here.
Actually, I don't. There's nothing to add. Why would you want anybody to play for you that you've got to ask to play?
Yeah.
I just want the reality is maybe you hear a story of a player that's pretty good and he doesn't know if he wants to play. Well, that's not down to me. That's down to my captains. They don't play for me. They play for themselves. They play for their school. If they play for me, that's a massive problem. We never win anything. So it's their team. So, but have I tried to recruit players from W&L and Hayfield? And yeah, I'm around there all the time. No, I'm joking.
I just think sometimes high school soccer gets a bad name. A lot of players, like if you play for one of these top club teams, you know, everyone on the field has a certain level, and they have an experience playing for your high school when you actually have a crowd, where you have a loudspeaker, where the games mean something. Where you don't travel all the way to New Jersey, play match fit or whoever, and kids you don't even know and never will see again. When you play in high school, you're playing against kids that you've known all along, and you're finally going to, you're going to get it on. I think there's an element of that kids don't even know about, and once they experience it, it changes them. Like my son heard so many bad things about high school soccer, and that's the only experience. I mean, he's thankful for his club experience, but it's the high school games that he remembers. Those are, when he's out there playing against Coach Bo and he's getting pushed around by those guys when they're putting the ball really high, and he's got to head the ball because Coach Bo's goalies put the ball 80 yards. That's what he remembers about soccer, not playing club and trying to get to the state cup for the 10th time. So I do think a lot of kids don't know what it's all about until they experience it, and once they experience it, it's really a game changer in terms of soccer, I think.
Well, I think also because some of the parents don't see the value in it. they see, in a sense, to them, the value is in club soccer, where their kid is going to go to the Jefferson Cup in Florida, and he's going to get recruited, by Barcelona or the Man U Academy that happens to be there, and then they're going to go on and play professionally and have this, and so, or they're chasing that, mighty scholarship, from certain school and this and that and everything else. And so I think sometimes, again, sometimes some of the parents don't see the value in it. I think there are a lot of parents that do see the value in it, but then you see some of those that don't. And they're the ones that sometimes are like in a club team for 1 year, and the team is not doing well, or he's not getting a ton of time because he's at a competitive club. So then he'll go somewhere else. Parents will send him somewhere else because he wants to get more time and play the same tournaments we play with somebody else. And so I think sometimes the end result drives kind of what they're trying to do. And I think if the kid is on board with his friends, guys he's going to school with, sees that there's, not that it doesn't have to be successful, but I think it does make it easy. You don't have to recruit kids when you're winning. If you're 0-10 year after year, nobody wants to play for you. So you definitely have to make sure everybody in the building knows who you are, and that you want them to play, for your team. But I think, again, I think sometimes it depends on the parents, depends on the kids, because, what's the end result? Are you really going to, chase that scholarship because they know that it's not coming from playing high school? Or are you just trying to play club and just trying to get the most out of that because you want the greatest return on your investment?
Yeah. Well, Coach Jimmy was talking about parents, and during the basketball season, we had a couple of, we have these Facebook groups that kind of bring basketball fans and soccer fans all together. And, one of these posts, a parent posted about his son quitting the team because he wasn't playing a lot. He made this big stink about it. And a very, very, really, really good team that's been at the state tournament in Prince William County team. I had a conversation with a parent whose son was going to quit 3 weeks before the season was out because he was over because he wasn't playing a lot. And I told him, well, if my kid had wanted to quit the high school team, he would have slept outside for a few weeks. He would, that's unacceptable in our house. How often, how much do you guys deal with parents, and how much pressure are the kids and also you getting from parents? Like Coach Bo's business partner, Coach Carlos, he doesn't talk to parents at Yorktown. He'll say at the meeting, you can always email me, but he does not talk to parents. There's no way to get a hold of Coach Carlos because the Yorktown parents are just they're unbearable. So he doesn't deal with them. But what about you guys? How much do you guys deal with parents?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I personally don't. I'm very. I want to be accessible to anybody, but I'm not going to pay attention to any comments about playing. But the reality is, I think it's important to be accessible because I don't know what's going on in that kid's life in their house, right? So if a dog died or a girlfriend or a grandparent is ill, I don't know about it. Then if I know about it, I may treat things a little bit different. Does it mean I'm going to play the player? No, but it means I can treat the player a lot differently. Or I think that's important. I think it's important to know what's going on in your players' lives. The reality is we're all very, very different. I mean, that's what makes human beings interesting, although society is trying to drive that out and make us all the same. But the reality is what makes us interesting is we're all different, all have different interests, different. So I'm happy to talk to parents, but I don't really engage. I think, the reality is 2-3 years, these kids are going to be out of the house. You want them to look after themselves. So why can't they do that in a safe environment of their high school, when you can see what's going on versus when they're at college when you can't see anything? So, I mean, I've had, I'm sure every one of these coaches had a kid that was 4.0 student in high school, went to college and failed out because they didn't have the stick getting them to the 4.0. Right. You talked a little bit a minute ago. The other topic, which I didn't jump on, was about why should they play high school, and high school is looked at in a negative element. I find that really offensive, to be honest with you, because that's a naivety and a lack of knowledge that makes people think that the reality is playing high school football is more entertaining, more passionate than any club game I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And I played in a national championship with a group of kids, played regional and state. So the reality is I've seen tears on faces every year in high school. I haven't seen tears on faces every year in club football. And I think both of them are really important. So to belittle one to try and make the other one better is kind of, that sort of tells you a lot right there. When people try and belittle something, normally it's a threat and it's a good thing, right? So the realities are all of the players in this country, regardless whether they're playing travel or club, do not play enough football. The top ones don't play enough because they're driving everywhere in between games, right? So driving 5 hours to play a game of football, doesn't happen in Villarreal, so we don't know what has to happen in the US. So they need to play more football. You know, more is better. Right? The more football they can get in. If you're a superstar for your elite club team and you're a right back, well, you probably play centre mid in your high school team, and I'm sure playing centre mid on your high school team will teach you a different part of the game and make you a better player. And even as a club coach, you know, and people go, oh, they play too much football, they're going to get injured. Well, I think most club coaches and most high school coaches are intelligent. The reality is we know they're doing both, so no one's going to run them to death to make sure that they do get the injuries that we claim they're going to get because of overplaying. But like I said before, we got online, it blows my mind away that I see 9, 10, 11-year-olds changing the subject that are unfit, because the only time they do anything is when they go to an organized practice, whether it's basketball or whatever sport they play. They don't ride bikes, don't play pickup. So the reality is our youth do not play enough football. And more importantly, they don't watch enough football.
Yeah.
Because if you don't watch, you're not going to learn. I don't care who the coach is. You can dig up Pele and Johan Cruyff and have them coach the players. Unless players watch games, they can watch Loudoun United, DC United. They've got to go to a stadium and watch games, and you will learn, because you can't learn from watching something on a box. And when people watch games, they watch a game on TV and they're sitting on their phone, so they miss 80% of the game. Because anyway, I'm talking way too much. I'll go back to the dream team.
That's right, Coach. Coach Dan or Coach John?
I mean, I tell the parents at the beginning, I'm accessible. I'm happy to talk to you if you have a concern. But they have to understand that I'm not going to talk about any other players. I will talk about their kid. And the first thing I'm going to ask them is, have you discussed this with your kid? Because my experience is that the players know. Like they know why they're not getting time. They know what they need to do better or to do more of to get more playing time, or they just know flat out that the kid in front of them is better. And sometimes I think the parents forget to have that conversation. And that kind of goes back to what Bo was talking about, and the kind of not being ready to go somewhere after high school because they've never had to advocate for themselves. So I'm fortunate. My parents, after we kind of have those conversations, get it. They go home, they have the conversation, and I don't hear from them again. Or I get an email, or in passing, it's, hey, we're good. No further follow-up is necessary. So I think it's kind of a growing experience and a learning experience for the parents as well. Just to let their kids be sometimes, but also have those conversations with them, because they'll find more information out from the kids than they will from me.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Coach John, Coach,
Yeah. So, very similar, try to be as accessible as possible. And again, not talking about anybody except for their child, but just like Dan's saying, right, it's, have you talked to your kid, first and foremost. But the other thing that is, I guess, maybe different at our school is we don't really have a super big parental involvement, which is, it's sad on its own right. I think it's, because they're very, it's a working class community. And I think, there's a lot of obligations going on, and some of these kids are playing in front of their friends rather than in front of their family, for the most part. And for the parents that are there, they understand, kind of the structure and the role that we put out there, with regards to, they have to earn everything that comes in front of them. And, the good news so far is, to kind of support that model, because it does arm them to try to be as most successful as possible when they leave, the nest per se. I think being accessible is important. But again, my phone's not ringing off the hook. So I think that's a good sign too, that those conversations either are being had, or at least I'm being as transparent as possible, and the parents see that as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Coach Jimmy, you want to jump in here?
The biggest thing is that, we let the parents know that, we try to be accessible And it's one of those things that there's certain things that you kind of make known, like, hey, after a game, if you're upset or something, don't email me, or don't expect a response within 24 hours, things like that we have at our parent meetings. But I think sometimes it is healthy to have some sort of line of communication with parents, just so, as Bo said, like we know these kids, and yes, they're coaches, but we actually sometimes don't know what's going on at home. We don't know what's going on sometimes in these teenagers' lives, that it's the littlest thing can set them off. The littlest thing can derail some of the plans that they might have. And there's a lot of home situations that aren't ideal. As John was saying, there's a lot of working class families that, yeah, the parents can't come, because they're working 2 jobs, or mom's working at night and dad's working during the day, and vice versa. So I think you just try to be empathetic to certain situations at home, and just try to make sure that they at least say, hey, you could reach us if need be. But I think, most coaches lay down that groundwork where it's like, this is what we're not going to talk about. We're not talking about somebody else or this or that. But if you want to, talk about your kid, yeah, we can do it. And then sometimes it is about putting the onus on the student themselves. I had a parent come in last year, kind of kid wasn't getting a lot of time. He made varsity his sophomore year. So junior year, he thought he was going to get a lot more time. He started to, but then he got injured. So he was nursing an injury. So his playing time fell. And then when he was trying to come back, the other kid was doing really well. So he just kind of lost the starting spot. And, the parents were like, well, mom came in, had a meeting with me, was like, well, he's just not enjoying it. He's not enjoying playing travel, and he's not enjoying playing high school. He's just really not enjoying playing soccer, this and everything. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, I have no problem with whatever you want to do, but have him come talk to me. I said, I'm in the building, so there's no excuse. He knows where my office is. There's no excuse. He can do whatever he wants, but I'm not going to, in a sense, take the quitting until he comes and talks to me. And the next day he did. He came and talked to me, and I think it was a lot of things that his parents were putting in his head. But you can kind of see that he had mentioned it before, that he had lost the passion for soccer, and having to be there, and it became more so of a chore. So I said, that's fine. If that's how you feel about it, then that's fine. But I want to hear from you, not from your mom, telling me why you want to quit. Like, I have no problem with you quitting, but I want to hear from you. And then just understand, you're quitting. You took a spot that could have been somebody else. So once you quit, you're a junior. Like, there's no coming back. There's no like, oh, well, let me rethink this and I'm going to try out next year. I mean, you'd be silly if you're going to try and come out for a team that you already quit. And so that was just kind of the one scenario that I'll, have him come out and talk to me, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, guys, I know the distinctive styles that your teams play, because I've watched all you guys. I've watched your teams play several times over the last few years, and Coach Bo, and Coach Jimmy way too many times over the last few years. So I know exactly what to expect when I watch you guys play. When you graduate players, obviously with high school, you're going to turn players over every year. And it's not like club where teams are going to stay together for 10 years or at least a few years. But every year you guys are going to get some new great players that can really help you, or you're going to lose some great players that's going to be difficult to replace. Do you guys, in your mind, are you trying to get one style of play and trying to find new players to fit that style of play? Or every year you just see what kind of talent you have, and then you try to find the best team that fits that talent? So is it a style of play that you're looking for, or is it basically you're going to try to maximize whatever talent that you may be able to have? Because who knows what you're going to have once the tryouts are over and the first games have been played.
I think it's probably a good mix of both.
Mm-hmm.
Year in and year out. I mean, last year was an aberration for me, where we were pretty deep last year, so we could implement a style and go with it, and everybody could handle it. Part of that is because a good chunk of those 11, 12 seniors that we graduated last year were in the program all 4 years. And I've got a JV coach who understands his role. His role is to get them ready for varsity and not necessarily win some made up championship, because there's no championship at the JV level. So he does a good job of making sure that what we're doing at the varsity level is mirrored at the JV level. But you know, we try to play an attractive brand. We always have. I know we've gone to Jimmy's Place and Bo's Place in years past when we were in their district, and we've tried to play the right way, and it has not been friendly results for us. But that's the game, right? That it is the game, and the knock is that the brand at the high school level is not what people would want to watch. But I think that may have been the case. I think as we get more people that understand the game and are not just looking to collect some gas money, you'll see that they're trying to implement playing the right way. Now there are times where you throw everything out the window and maybe you change to Route 1 and just try and get the result. But I think it's part playing a style and part trying to get kids to understand that style and implement that style.
Yeah. Anyone, Coach, you said Route 1, Coach Bo, that's probably your cue to come on.
You are as bad as one of those midnight bandits that gets a bottle of wine, drinks it around 12 a.m., 12:30 a.m., and then sends a nasty email. You fit in right there. No, I mean, the reality is your players dictate the way we're going to play. We all want to play a certain way, right? But, you know, if someone's going to give you time on the ball, then you'll take time on the ball. But if someone's going to squeeze you, you've got to release it early. If someone's going to put pressure all over you, there's space in behind. If someone's going to sit off, we'll keep it. Like really, the opposition to a level dictates the way you're going to play. and then the funny thing I laugh about when I hear people criticize high school players because they give the ball away and can't complete passes. Well, if they can't complete passes in high school, they can't complete passes anyway, right? So the game hasn't changed. We're using a ball. We're on a field. We're playing against human beings. Like nothing's changed, right? So the only thing that changes in high school, there's a lot of pressure from, well, in every game of football, unfortunately, a big part of it is all about winning, and it's too important at too young a age in this country. And that's a problem with the development aspect of football over here. In my opinion, I don't know anything. I'm just a 56-year-old idiot with an idea, but that's my opinion. But everyone's allowed one, right? So, but the reality is, if you put pressure on a player and they cough it up, they would have coughed it up in whatever environment they play in, right? And it's a skill, a high skill to play 1 and 2 touch football under pressure. And if you can play 1 and 2 touch football and never give it away, you're going to be a superstar. So, and it's very difficult to do that. And your kids get criticized because they can't do it. But you and I have watched professionals on TV that fail sometimes. So to criticize young players trying to do that, it's kind of irritating. So the reality is, everybody looks for these perfect goals in football. But if we all sat down and watched the highlights for all the goals scored in the Premier League, the Championship, Division 1, the Bundesliga, La Liga, if you watched every goal, 80% of them are all from the game breaking down that led to the goal. But we all look for this super goal. And, obviously highlights on TV, they see the super goal. But the reality is the other 85 to 90% were all someone had a shot, deflection, or someone played a bad pass. And those things we are not looked at like they're an important aspect of the game. And probably the most important aspect of the game is our players. I think they should be more mentally tuned in to the game all game long and just not when the ball is around them. And you should be mentally fatigued from playing this game. And the players that do well, they watch a lot of football. And so I don't think, I know you like to say Langley Route 1, but yeah, if you're putting pressure on my boys, I'd rather we try and play the ball in behind and go 1-on-1 versus 10-on-10 in the middle of the park. Well, I'd be out of my mind if I want to play through you.
Well, Coach, you could just remind me that you went to state while Yorktown was sitting at home the last 2 years, so that you could always call Route 1 if you want to. But
I've been very lucky with the players with the players we have at the school. They're really, really good kids. So I'm very lucky to be there.
Yeah, they're lucky to have you as well. Coach Jimmy or Coach John, you want to jump in here on?
Yeah, I think, like Dan said, you kind of work with the kids that are in your building to try to, keep some continuity, because the kids know kind of what your style is, what you do kind of as a team, as a program. And I think sometimes you do try to find kids that in a sense could be more technical, that can handle the way that you want to be on the ball as much as you can and get as many passes in as you can and get up the field as a unit. I mean, it doesn't always work, because obviously that same kid is also being coached by somebody else who may have a different approach to the game. And so then the biggest thing is I try not to change the way the kids play the game. I just try to get them to understand the differences. And I think that's the biggest thing and I tell them because, and like Bo said, you could be a right back, for your travel team, but then now you're a midfielder for your high school team. So now you have to look at the game differently. Now you're asked to do different things. Can you respond to that? Can you do that? And there are kids that I believe become better players because they can, or kids just like, yeah, no, coach, I'm not comfortable there. I can't do that. And then they kind of stick to their position because it's safe. So many times, and I yell at my guys because we've had more passes going backwards than forwards. I'm like, what's the point? What's the point of going backwards? The goal is on the other end. We can only make so many passes across the field and going backwards. If we're not making any passes going forward, then what's the point?
I actually prefer when you go backwards.
Yeah.
What's that, Coach?
No, and that's the thing. I think sometimes, it does come with some, not drawbacks, but yeah, I think teams know that sometimes you want to knock the ball around. You want to get everybody involved. But then it's like that could be a detriment. That could be, the downfall of a game because you do try to stick to it and then it doesn't work. Now we do make adjustments. You can't play Langley the same way you play Hayfield. You can't. I'd be dumb if I would have tried to approach those two teams the same way because you can't. And just like Lewis, you can't. I try to take a different approach. Not so much that we do a lot of different things, but just what to expect from those teams. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest challenge sometimes going year to year is just really finding the kids, getting them to understand.
Just to give you a bit of help, this year we're going to play 1 at the back and 7 up front. So you can send the kitchen sink early and we won't anticipate you won't have anybody back there.
I believe you'll be all up in our face. Then that's the thing. That's the beauty of it. Like I said, you kind of prepare for, what that some team might throw at you. And you got to be like, all right, this is what's going to happen. And, not to get too far off the subject, but this is what I told the guys was going to happen when we played Langley last year. I said, they're going to pressure us. They're going to be in our face. They're going to come at you. You're not going to get a ton of time on the ball. So we have to play quickly. We practiced the ball going over our heads and kind of playing with our back to the goal and trying to play out the back. We practiced that. And then what happens? You're down 2-0 at halftime. It's like, dude, like, what can you do? You know what I mean? It's like, but, I think that's the challenge. I think that's the fun part of it is getting new kids, trying to get them to understand what you do, finding those kids that can, do that, having them trying to come together, try to get that camaraderie, trying to get that teamwork, and then see what you can do, within that year.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Coach John, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, no, I'm very similar, right, with everybody been speaking. We have a baseline, and then everything is kind of dictated by the availability of the players, and then trying to maximize those available players. And it's always game by game. You might have to adjust your shape, you might have to adjust your pressure schemes, you might have to adjust the low blocks, all those kind of fun terminologies and styles, because again, all of us have been coaching for a while. All of us kind of have some scouting notes on each other's kind of styles, which is great to have, but also, it changes every year. There's always minor Rubik's Cubes adjustments. And, we hope to be able to adjust, one step ahead of kind of the assumption of kind of how people are going to play too. So it's a fun puzzle to try to put together every game, every season. But again, we're trying to maximize the players that are available and put them in the right positions. To what you're saying about moving the right back to center mid, I'd rather play him at right back and find a really strong center mid that fits first before starting pivoting him around. But I can see the benefit of that too, right, with regards to player development and growth. But it also, can open you up for some minute failures, which is a good thing too, especially early on in the season, non-district play. Really experiment and try to maximize and put together the best position team, right, before you hit the districts, before you hit when it really counts at the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Coach. Well, guys, my son's junior year was the COVID year, so we didn't play any non-district games. We played every team in Liberty twice, and as you guys know, every team Liberty was great. So every game was a dogfight. I mean, Coach Bo had Philip Bogatov, Coach Jimmy had a stacked team, a whole bunch of really good players. And then in his senior year, we had a traditional non-district schedule, and then we had a district schedule. And and when you play a non-district schedule, you're going to have a mixture of some very tough games and some games where you're going to win very easily. So it's both. As a coach, how important to you are those wins, those results in those early non-district games? My guess is you're just trying to find out, as Coach Millward just said, you're trying to find out whether you can play that right back. You can leave him at right back, or do you have to move him to center back because you don't really have a six on the team? Are you using those non-district games to find your best side, or do you want to get your team in a culture of winning where the kids begin to enjoy it and you guys can kind of see what's going to happen in May?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. I mean, the non-district games are just as important as district games. I mean, all the regular season games equate to the same thing. It sets you up for the district tournament. You don't want to pull a Mount Vernon, right, and go winless, but then bring in all the DC United players in 2013 and then go win a state championship, because that kind of defeats the purpose. But you also want to create that winning culture. You want to understand what's successful, what's not, so you can get those warts out and you can train against where your weaknesses are. I'm excited this year. We got another, I think it's the start of a new 2-year cycle. So slightly different schedule, slightly different non-district opponents, for us at least. And, we were able to get Meridian on the calendar this year. And, they're perennial Class 3 champions because of the school size, not because of the type of players they have on their team. So, having them early on, being able to play some other scrimmage WNL early on in the season is just a great opportunity for us to test ourselves against high level programs, before we get into, the games where, for the first time you play a team, they say, you play a team 3 times, you're going to end up beating them. I proved that wrong last year. Hayfield kicked our ass all the time across, tied, lost. So, but it was exciting again, but those tune-up games are important, at least, from the boys' confidence perspective, from the gel of the unit, really emphasizing, your captain's responsibilities in those non-district games. Plus you get the opportunity to play some guys to understand, are they willing and able to step up when the games kind of get tight, when their sphincters get really tight, because, this is make or break for them. Who's going to step up, who can you count on? You can discover that kind of early in the season in that non-district setup.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Who else wants to jump in on this one?
Yeah. Drickey, come on, you haven't said a lot.
I mean, winning's contagious, right? So you want to go out and you want to win. But one of my, I guess, frustrations is that 13-0, 0-13 in the regular season doesn't matter. It just matters where you're playing that first round of districts. This day and age, everybody's got relatively nice sized turf fields. So it's not really necessarily a home field advantage all the time. But we do. We want to go out and we want to win every game. Maybe that's my personal pride. I don't play solitaire because I can't win it every time. But it is what it is, right? And if you drop a couple of games or even all of your out-of-district games, I try and get hard competition for us in our out-of-district games. I like to go and play Jimmy. I like to go and play Bo. We look to play the teams that we're going to see down the road, so that when we do see them, it's not a shock to the system when things matter. But we do. We want to win. We want to win every game. Otherwise, what's the point? So, excuse me, it matters. But I also tell them, you know what? Once district season hits, now we really want to win those games. So there's a little more emphasis on those district games. But I don't think one versus the other is necessarily more important.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. Coach Bo,
I
Coach Jimmy.
think sometimes the people that I think make more of it, I mean, they do matter, because it's one of those things where if you're 500, maybe going into your first round of not your first round, but your conference games, most 3 or 4 games are out of district, right? So you're playing teams from the region. But then now, like either rankings or other, max preps and all this other stuff, like, oh, well, they lost 3 games out of conference, so this year they're down. They're going to be terrible, and things like that. So I think the bigger onus is comes from other outside entities and people looking at, like, because sometimes it does matter. Sometimes it does matter. Like, did you lose to Hayfield? Did you lose to Lewis? They're not in your district. How does that look? How does their conference look? How are they going to be? So like Daniel said, that you start looking at things once you start, like, okay, once we get to the district, once we get to the regional tournament, how is this? How do we look? How do we look compared to these other teams? And we face these teams, so we know kind of what to expect. We know what these teams are about and how to kind of proceed from there. But I think for me, we tend to try some things that we may not do in a conference game. Because the conference game, if you go 0-5, 0-6, however many in our conference, you have to go and play away somewhere. And if you could do really well in your conference and you want to host a game or maybe have a first round bye, so that you go to regionals and little things like that. So you do kind of have to play it a little bit differently. Like we'll try to have some kids that may not get a ton of time towards the end of the season, and then you just want to have them have some experience so that when it does come down to it, I feel like towards the end of the season, if you're healthy, you can make a good run. But if you have boys that have picked up knocks over the season because of high school and travel and just the demands that, they're playing a lot, I think sometimes it's just like, okay, we took care of business when we had to. Now let's make sure we're going into the postseason healthy, and all these guys, you're just not going, 14, 15 guys deep. You can really kind of mess with your roster to kind of see, get some guys a bit more playing time and just maybe, pull out, some victories over some teams that, you may not have done it earlier on in the season. So I think, it does matter, but at the same time, like, not obviously is much. I mean, I don't think anybody goes into a game wanting to lose it. You do want to go into winning it, but it's like, oh, we lost this one. Okay, now let's see how we can gather ourselves, because now our conference schedule is coming up and we need to really kind of not make little mistakes like that, because these games really do count.
Yeah. Well, Coach Bo, last year you made a lot of money betting against your team in non-district games, but when the district tournament came around, you guys were ready. Obviously, in the postseason, as always, Coach Bo's teams are going to be ready. What about you? Do you treat those games any differently, assuming you have no money on the game?
So to be honest, try and win every game. I think winning is a virus. It can be contagious, and that's great. And then but the saddest thing is that years ago they used to have websites that are up to date. The Post used to track it, so you knew everybody's record. But now teams that lose, they don't put the score on their website, so you got no idea what someone's record is when you play them half the time. But half the reason for winning all the time is if you're playing somebody and they walk into your place and they know you're 6-0. I don't care what their coach says to them before kickoff. All their kids know you're 6-0, right? Also, if you're playing against a team that's really, really good, instead of maybe playing 2 up front, maybe you've gone to 1 up front and you're playing 4-5-1. It changes the mentality of your opponent. Your record will change the mentality of your opponent, and I just think it's really important to win. I mean, I don't know how many video control pads I've broken over the years. Even playing my son at chess when he was 7 years of age, he could beat me. The only way I could beat him, I had to download an app, a chess app, and the move that he made, I made against the computer, and then the computer move, I would make that against him. That's because I couldn't lose to a 7-year-old, my own son at chess. So I don't like losing. I think it's good to try and win. And if you don't win, if you tried your hardest, right, and then you can brush your teeth at night when you go to bed, you tried your best. You can't win everything, but you can damn well try. What does get on my nerves about youth sports is if a team loses 1-0 to a penalty, we lost because of the penalty. So for the other 80 minutes, you couldn't score a goal. Right? But the criticism that referees takes really gets on my nerves. It really. I mean, I mean, I'm sure I've had decisions that go against me, but at the end of the day, you know, if you don't have any referees, we're not playing, right? And we criticize professional referees with VAR, right? So what chance do these poor guys have that we're going to have out there? And you know, yelling at them doesn't help, right? And then if you yell at them, what you're teaching your players to do, right? So anyway, I digress. Sorry.
Well, Coach, but the referees love you. You're such a good guy on the. You can be a little tough on your players sometimes, but the referees love you. Yeah, you're very diplomatic, amazing coach. But all you guys, I appreciate you. Yeah, you taking the time to talk about. I'd love to get together once a month and do this. And you know, next time we can talk about who are the early season dark horses for the rest of the year. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys doing this. This has been great. Again, all you guys are great coaches. I've enjoyed watching my son compete against you guys and trying to get a result. But even last year, when my son was no longer in the equation, it was so fun just to go watch your games. And you guys do an amazing job of with your teams. And you know, we're lucky you guys spend so much time with our kids. So look, guys, this has been great. I do have to run, but let's try to get together once a month and talk about what's going on in the game.
Hey, Julian, everybody say thank you to you, because you do so much for the kids by having shows like this and going to their games, photographing their games, talking to players. So you do more for anybody else. So you should really pat yourself on the back.
100%.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's a joy. I mean, I cannot wait. I'm a basketball guy, but I cannot wait the soccer season. I mean, I can't wait to get out there and see the first McLean Langley game. And
you can come to our tryouts if you want.
What's that? So anyway, guys, look, this has been great. Let's get together real soon.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Guys. Good luck at tryouts.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Boys.